I'll be honest here, I was not all that interested or excited about getting this Audemars Piguet Royal Oak Offshore in for a week on the wrist. I have always looked at it as an overweight Royal Oak reserved for larger-than-life action heroes with biceps the size of my head and wrists the size of my biceps, but I've never spent significant time with one, and I'm a firm believer in reserving final judgment until then. So, once it arrived, I kept an open mind and strapped this limited edition two-tone diver variant on for a week to see if maybe I'd warm up to it. So did I? Spoiler alert, hell yeah I did! The Royal Oak Offshore was first introduced to the world back in 1993, and a lot of people did not like it, including the original Royal Oak designer himself, Gerald Genta. The initial version was a 42mm stainless steel chronograph on a stainless steel bracelet with an exposed rubber gasket and had a rubber crown and pushers. Yeah, all that exposed rubber sounded weird then and still kinda sounds weird today. Some folks actually admired this bold new aesthetic, but it was controversial nonetheless. However, over time, just like with the Royal Oak, some people started to take notice of the Offshore, maybe in part because they finally warmed up to the design, or maybe because the big-time celebs like Arnold Schwarzenegger and Jay-Z started wearing one. Arnold first rocked one in a few movies in the late 90s and even had a special edition made for the third Terminator movie, but Jay-Z had a game-changing influence. His 2005 Offshore collaboration was huge because Jay was the most influential rapper at the time, so much so that he even felt that he reached his peak and retired. I really thought the Black Album was the last one, but obviously it wasn't. Anyways, that collab wasn't just between a rapper and a watch brand, but in a larger sense, it was a collaboration between hip-hop culture and the world of luxury. Before Jay, you never heard rappers mentioning anything but Rolex. Now, it's common to hear AP and Patek Philippe mentioned in song lyrics from a lot of rappers. And since hip-hop culture has made its way into sports, fashion, and just overall pop culture, that means almost everyone is aware of these brands nowadays. The root of all this? The Jay-Z and AP Offshore collaboration, which is really wild when you think about it. Let's move on to the Offshore I spent a week with, which was this limited edition diver version that was released in 2019. It boasts a hefty 300 meters of water resistance and has a pink gold case with a titanium bezel, exposed rubber gasket, and ceramic screw lock crowns. One crown adjusts the time and the other for the internal rotating bezel. As soon as I saw this thing, I thought the color scheme was gorgeous. The overall shape of the Offshore is bold and angular, but the soft gray rubber strap, which was incredibly comfortable to wear, and the muted gray mega tapisserie dial helped to give the watch a much more gentle vibe. It's still bold, but it's a gentler beast than a majority of Offshores that I've seen. I totally dig it. So when I actually picked up the watch to strap to my wrist for the first time, the first thing that caught me off guard was the weight and size. First, the weight. I know gold is heavier than steel, I've handled quite a few, but I wasn't expecting it to feel so heavy seeing that it came on a rubber strap. Now the weight doesn't bother me at all since I don't need arms like Conan the Barbarian to handle it, but it did surprise me. So if you like to feel heft on your wrist, or if you equate heaviness to expensive, and a lot of people do, this is the way to go. Secondly, the case size is listed at 42mm, but this Offshore feels much bigger thanks in part to the 54mm lug-to-lug distance. I own a 43mm Grand Seiko that feels much smaller than this thing, but again, this did not bother me in the least. After a few hours on my 7.25-inch wrist, it felt right at home. Side note, we become so used to the size that we typically wear that when we try on another watch that's drastically different in size, it just feels off. If you felt that before, I get it. The reason is you only tried it on for a few minutes. You have to wear it for a day or so for your mind to fully adjust to this new shape on your wrist, and after that, you can judge whether or not it's too large or small. I know a lot of us don't have the luxury, but it's something to keep in mind when you're thinking, that thing's too big for me. All right. covered my initial reaction of seeing this Offshore, then how I felt when I put it on, but even more surprises occurred when I spent some quality time with it. This Offshore is a gentle beast of a watch, but when I glanced over at it throughout the days and eventually put my macro lens to it, I realized that this thing is finished marvelously for a sport watch. The caliber 3120 is self-winding, beats away at 3 Hz, and has a 60-hour power reserve, which is adequate, but what's more important to me is that it's a joy to look at. Peep that gold rotor. The embossed AP logo and the coat of arms for both the Audemars and Piguet family looks absolutely stunning. It's art. I found myself looking at this at least 10 times a day, and every single time it made me smile. It was also fairly accurate, with this one only gaining about 2 seconds per day. The dial isn't quite as fancy, but still maintains a highly detailed finish. The Mega Tapisserie dial brings nice depth, and the gold accents on the hour markers and hands are a really nice touch. Everything is crisp with literally zero imperfections, at least from what my camera could pick up. The case is the same, with a mainly brushed affair with polished beveling, and it is nicely done, as it really all should be, since this watch was originally listed at $32,600 retail and even higher on the secondary market. I know that's a lot, and I know I'll probably never own a watch like this, but I think it's fun for myself and everyone else to see what you're getting from one of the most well-respected luxury watch brands to ever exist. You're not watching car videos on Honda Civics and Toyota Corollas all the time, are you? Nothing wrong with those cars, but you're checking out the wild and crazy dream cars, and that's what I'm trying to show you guys with this watch. All in all, this AP Royal Oak Offshore Diver was a great watch to spend a week with. My only knock is that it doesn't have the convenient strap change system that the newer models have, but that's not a deal breaker. The watch definitely has a rugged look that I typically can't see myself wearing, but the softer color palette helped to make it an easier option for me to pull off on a day-to-day basis. Sure, it's larger than the specs would suggest, and it's kind of heavy, and it's way outside of my price range, but it's actually comfortable to wear, looks great on my wrist, and makes me happy when I look at it. I really couldn't ask for more. Great watch.